Wow. Mahim. Hello. My name is Buffy. And yeah, this is exciting. I didn't plan for TV to be here, to be recorded, or any of that. I just said, yeah, sure, I'll come and I'll talk and I'll share my thoughts and what's going on. So bear with me. A little nervous with all this going on. So, we do ba ganu tatil em. Tell me a story from a long time ago. So long ago, the Pomo tribe, as you know it, right, didn't exist. But we did belong here, right? So we believe that we are indigenous of this land from time immemorial. This is where we come from. And according to our ancestors, some of us have a creation story, and we believe that the creator spirit, Coyote, used feathers, fire, and water to bring about the first people. While some scientists, they argue, oh no, the American Indians migrated to America from Asia thousands of years ago. It is crucial to acknowledge that these ancient tales have played a significant role in shaping the enduring bond between the tribes and their homeland. Before the arrival of European explorers and missionaries, the Pomo Indians inhabited the region north of San Francisco to the Mendocino coast. This area boasted abundant resources such as fish, clams, abalone, and seaweed. The Pomos were not a single group, but rather comprised of several distinct groups, each with its own language. And so today there are 7 diverse Pomo languages, dialects. And although some communities have lost fluent speakers of their language, efforts are underway to preserve their language through collaboration between natives and non-native scholars and tribal members. And so my grandfather, I grew up with stories, and my grandfather, who I called Pop, he passed at the age of 93 years old. And he was always moving, always doing things, had a great attitude, and told a lot of stories. And I'm grateful for those stories. He said that just in the Ukiah Valley, from one end of the valley to the other end of the valley, there were 17 dialects of Pomo. So when I was a small child, my great-grandmother, his mother, Stella Wright, and my grandfather, Clarence Wright, spoke our language to me until I started school. And so when I started school, the language stopped. And there's reasons for this. So let's step back to the arrival of Francis Drake in 1579. This time marked a turning point for many California Indians. The Spaniards established missions along the California coast and imposed Roman Catholicism on the native people. In addition to the destruction of their homes, the Indians were devastated by new diseases such as smallpox and pneumonia. From 1849 to 1863, California Indians faced further hardship. The gold rush of 1849 attracted thousands of fortune seekers from around the world, leading to the invasion of Indian lands and hostile attacks. During this time, Indians were denied state citizenships, voting rights, and the right to testify in court, leaving them without legal rights. This era, referred to as a war of extermination by Governor John McDougall, was a dark period for California Indians. And so my grandfather talks about some of these times of our people being herded like cattle, to the Mendocino Indian Reservation. And then once this place was breaking down, the system was breaking down, if you know anything about a reservation, we get fed well. This is called commods. Right? And back then, some of those commods, the bags of flour contained sawdust. And so these are the things that we were eating. There were other names that we were called diggers. And there's a controversy of why we were called diggers. Everybody has a different story, right? Because when we were here originally, we weren't a tribe, we were clans of people. We were bands of people. And that's why you see the names of tribes, they're changing over the years from, being rancherias or reservations. And that's a whole nother, story. And that goes into our federal government. And so our federal government, the way they take care of us is by sending out these agents to take care of the natives who can't take care of themselves all of a sudden. All of a sudden you get here, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We have no idea. So, the other thing, when I talk about the atrocities, I want you to understand that these atrocities were things that, we're seeing happen in our world today. We see the war that's happening in Ukraine, right? We see the war that's happening overseas. We see babies being murdered by bombs. The same thing was happening on these lands. The reason why that I showed up tonight is that I know there's controversy. There's controversy within my own people of whether or not we should change the name. But I'm here to more talk about the reason is we need to give our people, those kids that are growing up, something to be proud of because we're here. I mean, it's absolutely amazing that I'm even able to stand up here and have this conversation with you as a Native American woman. I have family who came out of Round Valley that I know of that were herded from all over this county up into Round Valley after this was done. And they escaped out of there. And only 2 of them survived. One of them being my great-great-grandfather, Frank Miller Hawkshaw. And you can find these people's names where? Not in our history books, not in school. This isn't something that I learned by growing up and going to school. They didn't teach me this. They taught me about some natives on the East Coast. They taught me about Thanksgiving. And I'm going to be honest. I come from a mixed breed. I'm non-native as well. I have English and whatever else going on my mom's side of the family. I love them. They're great people. Right? They've got this rich history also. But we're clashing. Right? So, back to the word Pomo. It originated from a village, actually, in Potter Valley, I believe. And so this linguistic guy comes along and he says, yeah, everybody's going to be Pomo, right? And so if you call some people Pomo, they're not happy about that. It's offensive because our people were named by our village sites where we lived, right? We are as a total, so that's important to know as well. And that our village sites were, they varied in size with families and homes and how they were built. The homes were built into the ground. There was willow. We have willow all over the place. I don't know if you know what that medicine is, but it's a beautiful medicine. It makes sweat lodges. It makes homes. There's all kinds of resources on this coast, into the valley, all over the county, all over this beautiful, beautiful land that we live on. Yet we're stomping around. We don't even know what we're touching. We think we get poison oak. It's the worst thing ever. But the medicine to cure it is right next to it. It's called soaproot. If we had conversations with one another, instead of continuously separating ourselves, right, we would be able to share that knowledge with one another. So as far as the villages back then, alliances were made and maintained through marriages and joint ceremonies. And villages were governed by minor councilmen called Tika Kali in northern Pomo, who were also referred to as captains. Healing was performed by outfit doctors, men, and sucking doctors, women or men, and using ceremonies, songs, and herbs. The Pomo built homes suitable for single or multiple families. And this went on. This is something that people are, a lot of people I've found out are really still confused about. So multiple families continue to live together on rancherias or reservations. And people are like, what? The kids haven't moved out yet? And the moms and the grandmas and the aunties are like, oh no, why would we want them to move out? Right? It's part of our culture. It's part of who we are. And we also we had our own sweat house for purification and relaxation. And then there were grand roundhouses also in some of the bigger villages. And we also moved around based on the seasons. So just because we had a village didn't mean that we were just staying there. We were coming as far as Clear Lake, coming over to this ocean. right? And along the way, we were making trades, and that's why obsidian is here, right? And that's why all our things were over there, and we share. And the other thing is, you know, my grandfather used to say this to me all the time, we're not stupid. If I don't use a word that's technical or bachelor degree, or I've got a PhD, does not make me stupid. And I used to think, what is he talking about? But if you think about it and you look at, just look at the pomo baskets. Men and women, children, weaved baskets. Those baskets have numbers. They have times of when you're going out into the season. You know, that's some high intelligence there. They can hold water. You can cook in them. I mean, you can hold your baby in them. Everything that needed to happen happened with those baskets. So they were high regards. You know, and for us to have to sell them because we were starving was a big deal. I mean, could you imagine having to sell something that you hold precious? So this is some of the things that my people were going through. And so going back to my family and what happened and why I stopped speaking the language when I started school, it was called surviving, preservation. And I could have gone either way, and I did for a while. Growing up on a reservation, growing up with the things that happened I didn't understand. There's alcoholism and drug addiction and domestic violence, and I couldn't understand, like, where did all of this come from? And I wanted to be so different, so I would run from this place, although it would follow me, and I would find a pattern, and I'd have some life experiences that were dark. And I couldn't understand those things. And then coming out of those things, because of my culture, right? Because there were people in my community who cared, right? And they put me in this basket and cradled me so that I could get to a place where I could start healing. And then I started to learn about my culture. And as I sat on tribal council a few years ago, Caltrans came through, and they started telling the story of this family who got their name from this rancher. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's my story. My pop said this story all the time. I heard this story growing up all the time. And as a picture went around to every tribal council member, and I was the last to get it, I looked down and I seen my great-great-grandparents. Charlie and Kate Wright from Little River. A beautiful, beautiful thing to happen. And then I realized that all of the stories that my pop had told me were true. Imagine that. That's a deep thing. That's an awakening of a spirit. I can't explain it any other way. And so then I got hungry. I want to know more about my people. I want to know why nobody's talking about us. Why don't my brothers and cousins know who we are? Why are we always talking about the atrocities of my people and not the winning people, the heroes? They're heroes to me. My people who stayed quiet for my voice to speak tonight, I want to honor them. My grandmothers, my grandfathers, they were silent so that they could stay alive, so that someone could be born. I truly believe that with everything I have. So the concept of indigenous is deeply rooted in our land. Our origin narratives, historical accounts, languages, and culture are intertwined with the locations from which we originate, where our families and ancestors have traversed. So Dina Gillo Whitaker argues that the unbroken bond with ancestral lands is what sets indigenous people apart from settler societies. In Mendocino County, the Mendocino Point of Fort Bragg's oceans, river, creeks, and the land hold significance as a sacred site for the original inhabitants of the land. The notion of place, its significance, nomenclature, and attribution is crucial in how we position ourselves both physically and metaphorically within a specific area. It defines our connection to a place and our assertion of ownership or knowledge. Our identities are intertwined with the places we hail from, where the names of cities, towns, lakes, rivers, and mountains encapsulate the tale and parts of people and their journeys, often marked by conflict. I wrote this presentation as a citizen of the Sherwood Valley Rancheria Band of Pomo. Sherwood Valley, or what we call Shabaldano Pomo, is one of the places I am from. Sherwood Valley Rancheria is located with Aboriginal homelands we have used and occupied since the time immemorial. Our homeland extends from approximately the Highway 101 corridor through the Redwoods Forest onto the coast. As the original stewards of this land, we retain we retain rights to protect the land, air, water, and food sources upon our homeland. We have freely gathered resources since time immemorial, and protection of the Aboriginal food sources and traditional gathering places is fundamental human right. Sherwood Valley Rancheria was established under a secretarial order in 1909. Sherwood Valley is the successor in interest to ownership of the Mendocino Indian Reservation, established by Act of Congress on March 3, 1853. Sherwood Valley Rancheria is governed under a constitution and bylaws duly adopted and approved by the Secretary of Interior on July 25, 1974. That's our Independence Day. Sherwood Valley Rancheria Tribal Council, as representatives of individual tribal members, strives to promote and perpetuate the protection of natural resources for generations. The naming, renaming, and reclaiming of places underscores these complex and contested narratives. The act of naming places may not be an overtly violent as wars, genocide, or forced displacement, but the erasure of Native peoples remains a deeply ingrained part of this region's history. The intentional displacement of Native people from these places by agents of settler colonialism aimed to efface their presence from the landscape. For Native people, our geographical locations assert we are still here. In a tangible manner, our geographies are intertwined with our memories, the stories we hear and tell, and the narratives we have yet to discover. Our ties to these places help us understand our identities and the legacies of our ancestors. Settler colonialism hinders our ability to trace our connection and responsibility to the land, making it difficult to comprehend what it means to grow up learning traditional practices, like making it harder to know what it means to grow up learning how to gather and prepare seaweed and gather materials for baskets, to use the land for the way our ancestors did. Despite this, our places and their indigenous names endure. They endure as a testament to the fact that the Native people are not merely surviving, but thriving. The reclamation of lands and place names is linked to the revitalization of language and culture, food sovereignty, and indigenous environmental advocacy. The legacies of the land are integral to our identity, just as we are integral to the land. Thank you.